Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 173 of the North Meet South Web podcast. Oh, should I push the thing?
Bam, there it is. Hey, folks, welcome back. Episode 173. We got some show notes today for the first time in about forever. I've been listening to the Midwest Artisan, which, if you've not been listening to that, you should check it out. Andy Hinkle, and his buddy. I
Andy?
don't even know. Midwest Artisan. I forgot his buddy's name. Hold on. I'm going to get it. Andy and Dalton McCleary. Doug Sisk is also on the show. I have never seen Doug Sisk on the show. He's a guest. I remember Doug. Do you remember Doug?
I don't remember, Doug.
All right, hold on. I'll show you his picture. Here, go to this page on their website. The people page. Go to the people page. Hold on. You'll
It's gonna be
recognize
annoying.
Doug. Doug is Mr. Disney. He is he loves Disney. And I remember we went and ate food with Doug in New York, actually, at one point when we were at Laracon.
Hmm.
So good old Doug. But anyway, they always
Vaguely familiar.
yeah. Yeah, the mustache is probably throwing you off, but
Yeah.
good dude. Good dude. But
Nice.
Andy and Dalton and Doug. Doug's only been a guest on one show, but I digress. Anyway, they are, semi-organized when they have their show, and I was like, I should put some show notes together. So I did today. Not show notes as much as just items to talk about. So I figured we should start with what everybody's wondering about, which is your new mic setup, because that's what everybody wants to know about right now. So let's hear about it.
Well, I got the Rodecaster audio processor last year because I wanted something that I could take with me to Laracon to do some podcasts and recording some audio stuff on the road. And it was easier to have something that I could just plug in, hit record, and not have to worry about it, and have that connect with like the lapel mics, like the wireless ones and things like that. But
Yep.
it didn't, as part of doing that and sort of simplifying my audio stack, I got rid of the Scarlett, I got rid of the DBX processor, and so I found that the audio from my microphone, my SM7B, was always just a little bit quiet, and I
It
either
was,
had to
yes.
bump the gain inside of the Rodecaster, which introduced a bit of noise to the floor, um, or I had to put the microphone back in the frame in front of my face, which is not the end of the world, but I like the cleanliness of like the open space, and it's easy to
Agreed.
flap your hands
You don't have
around.
this big wind
Yeah, the
thing,
windshield
windscreen in
in
your
your
face.
face. Yeah, and so with like uh, there was the impending announcement for Laracon AU 2025 coming. I thought, well, I'll have a look at what's around. And Simon Vrashliotis, who's over at Laracast now, he just looked at purchasing a new shotgun mic as well. And there was a bit of talk about it recently, and I thought, well, I'll get that. And I sort of got the arm, I got the microphone. I just put it there
What mic
and
is
and
it? Do you mind me asking? What
yeah,
the
it's
what the purpose of?
The Sennheiser MKE 600.
An
So it's
MKE
like
600.
it's not the cheapest microphone, but it's not like the top end. I think
Sure.
Simon's always going on about like the MK50 or something like that, which is the top of the line, like $2,000 shotgun microphone. But I think my space is fairly good in terms of noise, and I don't get too much echo or anything like that. So I think
Mhm.
this, and I just put it up there, hit record, and talked at the microphone for 7 minutes, and it worked out pretty well. With that video that we put out when we announced Laracon, when was it? Yesterday, I guess. So yeah, it's all been going well.
Yeah, it looks good. It sounds good. It looks good because you can't see it. Sounds good
Yeah.
because it just sounds good. But it's exciting. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think you're right. Like the having the clean frame does look really nice, and it's something I've always been jealous of. And so we're ending the podcast effective immediately. Sorry, folks, if you've enjoyed all the years,
So
it's just too much for me to take. No, I'm just
I
kidding. I
continue.
I have been recording at this kitchen table for oh boy, long time now. However, I will say that we are coming upon a time where I might eventually have a more permanent space to do recording. We are
You mentioned
finishing
this
our
the other day.
basement. Yeah, finally finishing our basement, and it has been a epic journey, my friends. We found a guy who was a friend of a friend who was going to do it, and he did it, but it was like, that doesn't look right. Can you come back and fix these problems? Yep, sure thing. There's still more problems. Can you come back and fix these problems? Yeah, sure. Okay, how about these problems? It was just bad, 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 bad.
It's
And
always swapping
so
out for
it
another,
got to
isn't
the
it?
point where it was like, okay, he can't do this. So I hired somebody else to come in and fix the rest of it. And
Mhm.
so it's finally making progress now. Like they've gotten done more in 2 days than he got done in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? Sort of deal. So anyway, we are nearing the finish line here, and we've got to get paint and furniture and things like that. But we are getting closer, and so I'm really
Really good.
excited. It's going to be great, and stoked about that. Let me tell you something else that has changed my life recently.
Mhm.
AirPod Max.
Yeah, Pod Max, we're rocking them
Just
now.
kidding. They do not change my life at all, actually. I don't really like them. I'm being
Yeah?
I thought for sure I would love them. Yep. Don't really care
It
for them.
takes some getting
They're
used
okay.
to.
They're okay. But I think I prefer my AirPod Pros. Just
Alright.
generally all around, I think I prefer my AirPod Pros. The AirPod
Right,
Max
yeah,
are
yeah.
great for noise canceling. So if I'm watching a movie in bed
Mhm,
at
mhm,
nighttime, AirPod Max all the way.
for sure.
However, if I'm doing anything else, AirPod Pros, 100%. Like
Yeah,
I was doing something in my basement, working on some stuff the other day, vacuuming some stuff up, and I had the AirPod Max on because I was listening to The Office. Not fun. Not a good
yeah,
experience. Anytime you bend
yeah.
over, those things are like wanting to fall off your head. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
has
weird
that been
because,
your
like,
experience too?
you would think all the weight is over your ears
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the cups are, but they seem to move. So I'm the same as you. They're good if I want to watch, like, a movie and I want
Mm-hmm.
good sound, like, good closed in sound,
Absolutely.
loud without, leaking out. But the
Yep. Yep.
AirPods, this little thing, this little
I
case
know.
that they come with,
They're
they're
just
just always in
incredible.
my pocket. Doesn't matter where I go. I go grocery shopping, I go, out, just always in the pocket. I go to the office, they're always in the pocket. Yeah, it's
100%.
simple.
Isn't that
Whereas
funny? You'd
the Macs, they sound great, but they're unwieldy to carry. It's like, do I put
mm-hmm.
them in my bag? Do I like
Yeah.
sling them over the shoulder strap? Yeah, they're like no good for running, no good for
Yeah.
the gym.
Yep.
Because like your ears sweat in that situation, and the ear cups, they like you can replace them, but you can't wash them. They stink after not very
Yes.
long at all. So yeah,
So I've been a little bit
yeah. Sorry,
disappointed. I'm
sorry
honestly
about that.
thinking of selling them, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
will see. I've got
They're
other
good
stuff
on
I
the
want to.
plane. They're good on
Yeah.
the
Oh,
plane.
that's true. That's true.
They block that noise. I mean, they don't do it as well as the QC35s did, the old Bose that I had before,
Mhm.
but I think they're decent on the plane, but they also don't have the battery life of what the QC35s did. So yeah, it's like I've
I
got
have
them just because
heard.
they're an Apple thing, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. They integrate with the ecosystem so well, but I've heard that the noise canceling on these used to be way better, but they got sued and they had to change the algorithm they were using to do noise canceling, and so it got
Wow.
worse. Isn't that weird?
That's weird.
Bizarre,
It's
right?
a
A
weird thing to
patent
sue over.
troll
You
of some
can't.
sort.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, always
Yeah,
patent
like, oh, we
trolls.
figured that out. You can't use that. So
Hmm.
anyway, yeah, so that's been interesting. These AirPod Max, they're okay. They'll be all right. I'll continue to use them, but it is funny that like what you said is so true. Like these AirPod Pros, it's I think it's like a Seinfeld bit. It's like, got my wallet, got my, keys, got my whatever sort of thing. So it's like typically, now it's I've got my phone, I've got my wallet, I've got my keys, I've got my AirPods. Like my AirPods are always just there. And that's a
Yeah,
pretty that's a pretty high bar to clear, I would say, to make
yeah.
the
For it to
item
be
that you
the
sell
thing.
be a
Yeah.
everyday carry. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
it is, I think, for a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's and when I'm leaving the house, it's phone, keys, and the AirPods. Basically,
Yep.
that's all. I don't have a
Do you have
wallet
to carry a
where
wallet? No, do
no.
you have your wallet on the back of your phone or no?
I have for like very specific situations, like my
Yeah.
bank. No, when I went to Laracon last year, I had my company card. I didn't bring it with me because company card is Apple Pay. So I went, and then the first time I knew I was in trouble was when I got to the rental car place, and they're like, "No, we need a physical card." I'm like, "What
Eh,
do you mean?" Like, I
yeah.
have literally never spoken to you people. I went online to book my car. I got the confirmation via email. I came here, like, and now they want a physical card, and I'm like, well, like, so yeah, I bought one of those like MagSafe clip-on, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like a single card thing, and the only thing that goes in there is the company card, and it's for those
yep.
two, literally those two things only. Number one was the rental car place, and number two was the airline when I needed to like check some extra baggage coming back from Brisbane last year. Was like
Mhm.
they wanted a physical card because they've got like the clunky keyboard that's got like the swipe thing in it, and I was like, what? is happening.
Now, do you not have to have a driver's license?
Digital driver's license.
They have those. That's awesome. We
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
that yet.
Digital driver's license, Medicare card is digital.
Oh man, you guys
Uh,
are lucky.
all my credit cards, bank cards, debit cards, like all of that's digital.
Oh, I so wish we could do that. It's
Yeah,
coming today. It's
no,
coming a day where we can have that,
yeah,
but not yet.
yeah,
Not quite
yeah.
yet.
So there are
Um,
sometimes even like my health insurance card is digital. We just tap
yeah,
that. It's
I've got
like
that too. My health insurance, my
yeah.
car insurance, they're all digital, which is pretty nice. But yeah, not my license. No license yet. They won't let you do it. So
Some
that's annoying.
states in the US have them, don't they? I think there's one or two
Yeah,
that have
some states
piloted.
do. Yeah, some
Yeah,
states do, but not Illinois. Shocker.
yeah,
Not Illinois.
yeah, yeah. Well,
We'll get there eventually.
you get there.
Um, so a couple other items here. I've got one thing, which is that we've talked about this before, but we do this every day when we meet up as developers. It's called Boom Party. Have I
Yep.
ever had you play that with us before?
They haven't had me play it, but you have mentioned it on the show before.
Okay. Well, it's finally dead. It died.
Yes.
Laron.co, it died. And so we are looking for a replacement. So we've tried
Mhm.
a couple different things. I'm curious if any of our listeners out there have any suggestions. So it's just like I'm looking for a game that you can play in like, you know, 6 minutes or less. 6 minutes or less. There's actually one that we've been playing that I've found has been pretty fun. It's crunker.io. So it's like Counter-Strike, but with
Okay.
like these like Minecraft looking characters. Like it's very basic. Crunker.io. It's actually been pretty dang fun, but it requires a ton of focus, a ton of focus. You know, it's like it's a first person shooter and everybody's insanely competitive, of course. So that's a fun game. I love the competition of it. However,
Mhm.
like I need something that's a little bit less engaging, which sounds crazy, but the whole point of that time is like people get to chat and hang out and like it's not insanely focused. It's
Yeah.
more like I can kind of talk and do this at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm looking to see if anybody has any ideas for that. So send them in if you do. That'd be fun. In the meantime, I am working on resurrecting it. And so I'll kind of keep you guys posted on the progress of that. We've got what I think is a working prototype, but it still needs some work. And finding time to do that these days is a bit difficult. So we'll get there eventually. And when we do, we'll definitely like open source it and throw it out there for the world to use. It is way too fun to keep to ourselves. It's just the best game. And I really, really enjoy it. So when that
Nice.
comes around, we'll definitely share that. Should be a fun one. But what
Mhm.
has been up in your life? I have one item to talk about later in the show that I think is going to be an interesting one. But before we do that, I want to hear what's going on with you. What's going on at work for you these days?
Work has been very busy. Lots of in like my team of one, my special projects team. It's a lot of the things that like need to be done, but are not necessarily pushing the commercial side of the business forward.
Sure,
So
sure.
part of that is like Laravel 12 upgrade, or
Uh huh.
at the moment the big one that we're focusing on is removing the tenancy package from our
Oh
application,
boy, that's happening,
because
huh?
we're gonna move away from multi. So everything is now just on like app dot the domain, and then it's kind of merging some stuff. We've got some naming collisions between the central or the landlord database and the tenant database. So we're trying to merge those things together. Revisiting all of the testing stuff that I did 3 years ago. Trying to get the test to run and to run in a performant way.
Hmm.
Laravel just like it handles transactions across multiple databases okay, but it just doesn't handle doing the migrations and things like that in a sane way on different connections. So just trying to like figure out what that story is, and then remembering all of the pain I went through last time to get it working, and now having to untangle it.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so we're gonna make like the app dot stuff the the default connection, and then we're going to move all of the other stuff into other connections. So just working that out. We've got like 386 migrations or something like that.
Dang,
Squashing them,
you're gonna
squashing
squash
them,
them?
squashing them works kind of, and that gets that time down from like 15 seconds to 4 seconds. But we don't want to migrate the
Nice.
database on every test, right? Um, but we need to have like a default state. So we need to migrate, then seed, and then start the transactions. So getting that
Okay.
to work on like in parallel is different too, because parallel it's
Mm,
got the tokenized databases, so you've got to like do that differently, and you've got to make sure it works for, I want to run the entire test suite in parallel, but also I want to run an individual test and make sure all of that kind of stuff works. So big focus there, and just revisiting, like doing some integrations with our parent company, doing some integrations with third parties at the moment as well. Still using and loving Saloon. Um, I think I've landed on like a real, and I think we've spoken about this on the show before. I've landed on like a really nice approach for building SDKs, building like resourceful clients and things like that, handling DTO. So Saloon will handle DTO creation for you. You can do like, 2 DTO or whatever the method is using
nice.
the
Okay.
create DTO from response. The problem with that is the typing is not great in terms of like knowing that when I call 2 DTO, it's a specific DTO,
Sure. Yeah. It
because
just
of
kind of does it just spit you out a generic DTO? Is it just give you like an object with properties available on it, sort of thing?
well, so in the create DTO from response, you can do, whatever DTO objects you want in there. The problem is that because it's the type is defined by the parent,
Uh-huh.
you can't like narrow that to say like this is a specific kind of DTO. And I know
Okay.
Sam Carre's got a PR open at the moment on the Saloon repository to handle that in a better way, that I've got to have a look at and see if, that's going to work, and give a bit of feedback on that. So the way that we've kind of been encapsulating it is calling like our connector named after the API that we're connecting to. So what I've been working with lately, not that I've written a connector myself because they've got one, but for example, Bento, which is a transactional and broadcast mail provider. Um, and so you would have like, instead of having a connector called, Bento Connect. We just have like Bento extends connector. And then in that, we define resources. So we would have like broadcasts and people and transactional and things like that. And that then defers to a class that accepts the thing. And then we've got like resource based things like inside of people, you'd have people create, people get, people tag, people, all of these
Are
things
those
in there.
separate classes or are those methods?
They're all methods inside of a people
Okay.
resource class. Yeah.
Resource. Sure.
So, and that way you can just like, you can handle, injecting the bento class that'll do all your credentials or your authentication,
Yep.
and then you would
Yep.
call like this arrow bento arrow people arrow create, and then
Yep.
that would take a create person data object or something like that, and so
Nice.
you
So you're
get
passing
that
in a
type
DTO
support.
object as well. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so rather than
Almost like a
passing,
form
like, arbitrary
request?
data, almost like a form request, yeah. And so instead of passing, like, arbitrary arrays or having, like, 5 or 6 method parameters or things like that, you just give it the DTO and it handles all of that kinda stuff, and that way you
That's
can
pretty nice. Yeah.
do, like, you can then have, like, the responses created from response, and you can kind of encapsulate all of this stuff in abstract, parent classes and things like that, good quote, unquote, "architecture" stuff, and that means that, you're getting type safety, you're getting IDE completion, you're getting all of that kind of stuff, and without having to like duplicate too much stuff. And then really all you're doing then at that point is mapping between the data structures in your application, so your database models, your form request or whatever, and whatever is represented in the remote. So in the responses coming back from Bento, for example, you could map that onto things coming back. So it just makes the whole end to end process very nice. But the best part of doing this with Saloon is that what you do for Bento is the same as what you would do for the Laravel Forge API, or what you would do for um, I don't know, the Wilbur Group API or whatever else. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
it makes it very portable in the same way that we always try and strive to stick to the conventions of the framework by following this similar approach across all of our SDKs. Like, it's predictable where to put things, what to call things, how to reference them. And then really the only variables between those things is the connector itself, where you have to specify this is how we do authentication, or this is some special header that we have to send, or all that kind of stuff. So and then the testing story is really good as well, because you've got the Saloon fakes, and you can make assertions against what was sent and when it wasn't sent and things like that as well. So it's a really thoughtful library, and I think by doing this now for, I don't know, a year and a half or so across, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe 20 different integrations. It just feels like a really um, solid approach. So yeah, shout
Now,
out
how
to
about
Sam Curray.
yeah, 2 questions on that. Number 1, how do you handle if you're in your local development environment and you need to be able to imitate some sort of response from that bento connector? So, let's say that you have a bento newsletter or bento, let's say bento subscribers ad, and
Mhm.
you're trying to add a subscriber. And maybe you have a couple different types of responses. You have like a success response where it says like, okay, this subscriber was added to this list. Or you have a nope, you can't do that. This subscriber was already added to this list.
Mhm.
Or you have a this is an invalid email address sort of thing. Like you have like different responses that you might get from that endpoint. Do you have a way to fake those sorts of responses locally in your like in your local development environment so that you can program an interface, not an interface, but like you can program your user interface to respond correctly. So like in those instances, maybe somebody's trying to sign up for your newsletter and you want to be able to say, if I get this type of response back from this, I should handle it this way and I should display this type of UI. Is there any way to build out fixture data like that in the way that you've done it, or not so much?
In tests, yes. In like actual local development where you want to
Mhm.
fake the responses, I have not done that. No, I know what you're trying to say. So you're wanting to basically swap from actually hitting the API to just saying like these are the responses we get back from that API.
Yeah. And the nice thing is for
Yeah.
you is like you have DTOs that sort of are already created to say if I, which this brings me to my second question as well, but um you know the shape of those DTOs that are going to be coming back because you've already got them product sort of pre-programmed, right? So if I just wanted to return a fixture DTO, like in this case, I send this magic email, like this email that's called
Mhm.
already subscribed at gmail.com. I would expect to get the already subscribed response sort of
Yeah.
thing. Sort of like when you have Stripe Troke and you do 414141, it's like, well, that's going to be an
Mhm.
invalid CVV. Yeah, that's the question. So it sounds like
S-
no, which is
I haven't
fine.
I haven't done it.
Okay.
Conceptually, it would be not too dissimilar to the testing story though. So you can pass in a mock client, and with the mock client, which is what you would do with a Saloon .op fake in your tests, you can
Yeah.
pass in a mock client, and the mock client can be instructed to respond in specific ways. So you could technically build all this stuff out and have in your service provider where you bind the connector to the container. You could do some
If
environment
I'm in
switch
my
or
dev
config
environment,
switch. Yeah,
yeah,
if you're
right.
in dev, then pass in a mock client, and you can say like this arrow bento arrow with mock client or set mock client, and you could pass it your own mock client that would always return these things in that specific scenario. So you could have like a failure state client which would only ever return failures, or
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
success state client or you could do like the Stripe approach where different inputs would trigger different responses, and you could do that switching. So you'd have to build it out, but it is, I think, conceptually possible to do it using the existing like fixture or fake response stuff with the mock client that's there. Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's been a big point of need for you guys yet, right? It doesn't
No.
sound like it's been a really big felt need for you. So it's not something you've had
Yeah.
to even invent or anything like that. Yeah,
No.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
it's we certainly test for all of the edge cases in terms
sure, sure.
of, okay, we know we're going to get a 404 back or a 403 or a 401, and we can write those
And you
tests with
test
those
those.
features. Yeah, and we would like
Exactly.
mock response, colon make, and then you could say like just return a 404. Like we don't necessarily
Yeah.
care what's in it. We just want a 404 so that we know that we
Yeah.
handle it. But you're talking about being in the UI and actually like clicking through the UI and saying, I put
Yeah.
yeah,
So for instance,
yeah,
I know that when the Laravel Cloud guys were talking about how they're doing
right.
it, like Nuno basically did exactly what I'm talking about, where
Mhm.
he'll have different providers and say, if I'm looking at this type of provider, like it's not S or it's not an AWS provider, it's not
Yep.
a whatever, it was like a fake provider or something like that. It would always return these fixture
Mhm.
responses instead of the regulars. But that way you could test drive failure states, success states, partial success states, those
Yeah.
sorts of things. Where like those when you have interactions like that with APIs that are very involved, that's insanely difficult to be able to give or hand off to designers or to developers who are working on the front end those types of like intermediate states, and it's hard to like
Yeah.
be able to test those. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's the reason I ask. And actually, so that has been one reason why I remember when we talked to Sam forever ago, years and years ago. I was all on board with Saloon, and then I was like, "What about this?" And it was like, "There's not really a good story for that." And so it's like, "Okay, well, I guess we'll stick with what we have for now." But it sounds like what you guys have and the way that you're using it seems very productive,
Yeah.
and I would be definitely interested in checking that out. Um, I did have
Yeah. I
one other
mean,
question on
it's
that front after this. Yeah.
yeah. All of the saloon docs call it testing. And the your initial thought is this is for my automated test, but um the way that it's done, you can have like a global mock client, or you can just have um the mock client passed into your connector, and then it will just do what you want it to do. So I think without having done it myself, I think it's certainly possible to do it. And I know that you and I have talked on the pod before about you're doing this gateway stuff with, for example,
Hmm.
Stripe,
Hmm.
where you've got the fake Stripe provider and the Stripe provider, and you can switch those out depending on your environment to get the
Right. Right.
things that you need. So I think you could do a similar sort of approach. Having not written a line of code that does it, I think you could certainly do it easily enough based on a config switch or a feature flag or something in your environment, and then just like, here is what these things are, and then those responses can be made to respond to different inputs, for example. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep, I agree. I think that you are right that it does seem like you can have recorded responses where you have fixtures, and I think there's a way to do it. Like you said, I
Yeah,
think there probably
I
is
agree.
a way to do it. It's just probably not maybe super clear the way that I've explained it. Okay, here's my other question. In the case that you do have errors, do you handle those? Do you ever expect to get errors, or in the case that it's an error, is it rather exceptional, meaning it happens so rarely it's not something you need to account for robustly, and so you just kind of say, "Meh, throw an error, chuck an exception, we're done," or do you have to handle them more carefully?
Typically, we'll just let whatever comes back from the third party bubble up. And that'll get caught as an exception, and it'll get sent to Datadog, and our BAU team will go through and they'll look at those things. If we see the same errors over and over again, we need to find out like what is the actual reason that this is happening, and how do we prevent it? Where do we prevent it? Do we do it on our side, or do we, have to engage with the other side? Is it bad data in one system or the other? Or do we need to explicitly handle this and then present, a meaningful message to the user? A lot of these things are async processes anyway, so the user wouldn't see them, but we track them.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, okay, this can't happen because that user already exists in the system. So, yeah, I think it varies on a case by case basis as to whether or not we do. I think when we build the integration initially, we'll do it at a very high level. These are the known good responses, these are the known bad responses, and then sometimes we'll hit like some validation edge case, something that gets added into the third party system that we've got no way of knowing. It's not documented, it's not presented to us at the time. And so, we kind of just wait for those things to happen and then deal with them as and when they come up. Does it need to be handled automatically? Does it need to trigger a specific ticket into the system? Does it need to be followed up by someone, one on one with the client? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I was curious, like, I've thought about this. So you've got your DTO that's coming back most typically, and then if it doesn't, sort of you have an exception. And
Mhm.
how do you handle those exceptions? It's sometimes even if it's exceptional, there's pieces of information that you can use on those exceptions to handle it gracefully without throwing it. Like sometimes it's like an expected exception. You might get a 4.0 something that would be like a client exception
Yeah.
that would be like I might get a like if I'm looking for a resource that does not exist. It's not that the endpoint is bad, but the resource is not there. I get a 404. Well, I could be expecting that sometimes. So in the case that I get a 404, do I handle it as an exception or do I wrap that up in a DTO, which is like a bad response DTO or like a user not found DTO? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like we've had that problem too, where it's like sometimes our endpoints we expect to get responses that are not standard responses, but we know how to handle them.
Mhm.
We've seen them enough that we know how to
Yeah.
handle them. So I was just curious if you guys are typing those as well, but
Yeah.
sounds like
I mean,
maybe you guys
even
don't have
in
to deal with the flaky API sort of thing either.
yeah, even in those situations, I think you could probably inspect if you know what they are, you could inspect those responses and then throw your own domain level exceptions
Yes,
that,
we do
you
this
know, that
sometimes.
have some kind of like unified interface so that your front end knows that if I get this response, I can get that information out and present it in a consistent way. A an easy way to do that is like a validation exception with messages. And then, but it depends on what it is. If it's user input related, then it's easy to say, oh, you can't use this email address, and you can put an error onto the email field that this email address is already subscribed or whatever.
Sure.
In some situations, it may be something else. Leveraging domain, business logic specific exceptions, and then saying like this is the shape of a Wilbur group exception.
Right.
Wilbur group exception colon colon. And using static constructors to then have well-named
Mhm.
methods that then do something. They take some input, they take the whole request, or they take parts of the request and they reshape it into something that your front end knows how to present back to the user.
Yeah. And I mean, really, Laravel does this too, where you can say arrow throw, and that
Mhm.
will throw an exception, or you can just say don't bother throwing,
Swallow
and
it.
then you just
Yeah.
have to check the response. You just have to check was it a success or was it a failure?
Mhm.
And so it
Mhm.
doesn't actually throw the exception by default. It just says, nope, I know exactly how to handle that. It's an exception, yes, but I'm just going to keep it in this request object, and you can ask me about it if you want to, but I'm not going to
Mhm.
chuck an exception. You just expect that you're going to get a response returned. You know, so that's sort of the question is like, do you handle it as an exception or do you handle it as a response object and then you look at it further? So it just
Mhm.
I guess it's just depends on how you want to handle it. But I was
Yeah.
just curious if you
Yep.
guys have anything on that. But okay.
Nothing specific, no.
Here yeah. So Laravel 12 upgrades. How hard was it to do Laravel 12 upgrade? Is it as easy as they say?
In our case, no. We're in the process of pulling inertia out of our application. And so because we're trying to remove inertia, but Nova version 4 does not support inertia 1.
Boy.
Need to move to inertia 2. Inertia
Mm-hmm.
2 requires Laravel 12. So we're trying to
Ooh.
remove inertia. We're trying to remove inertia. Um, but we need to keep Nova. But to keep Nova, we need to go to version 5. Version 5 requires inertia 2. So we've basically got to get rid of um, inertia first. And then I think the Laravel 12 upgrade itself was fairly straightforward. We didn't have too many issues there. It was just that
Composer
aspect of it.
update. Basically,
It
change
was
version 12
it was
composer update.
basically, yeah, just a composer. There weren't heaps of changes. I had Laravel Shift do it, of course, and yeah, there wasn't too much. Like we didn't have to update any of our like self-managed dependencies or anything like that beyond saying like these need to be able to support Laravel 12 now.
Okay, cool.
Everything was
Yeah.
was was fairly straightforward from that perspective. So not totally hands off as suggested perhaps, but it was not like a huge amount of work. And we've done some potentially criminal things in our code base that should no one else should be doing anyway. So the
Nice.
mileage may vary there.
Nice. We are up on a level 11 on everything.
Mhm.
We're right now moving to everything to PHP 8.4. Probably about
Nice.
halfway there. And then
Hmm.
after we get to 8.4, maybe we'll push to 12, Laravel 12. But we have like so many repositories. It's just as, it gets crazy. So Laravel 12, but if it's really easy, that would be nice because it wouldn't have to be too crazy. If I just like give the tests come back green, then thumbs up, let's go, push it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'd be fine. We are nearing the end of what we typically spend our time on. I have another item that I'll sort of leave with you to see what we think about for next time. But I'm on Laravel Horizon, which is a great tool,
Mhm.
but I do not understand how max processes and min processes work with queues. I don't.
Okay.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
It is crazy to me, and it is like it seems like it should work a certain way, and it doesn't, and I'm very confused about it. And I probably need to read the documentation better, but I messaged Mohammed Saeed,
Mm.
Mohammed
Right?
Saeed,
Yeah.
and said, "Dude, can I pay you for some time to just help me unconfuse myself about how this is supposed to work?" So the long and short of it is, if I have like 3 workers, max workers of 3, min workers of 1, and I have 10 different queues that could be handled by any of those supervisors,
Mhm.
I would expect that if there was 100 jobs in one of those queues, all 3 workers would go attack that thing, right? All 3 workers would kind of go run through that list of 100 jobs that are in that queue. It does not work that way, because if you have a supervisor that has more queues than the number of workers that you have available, it will assign 1 worker to each of those queues, and that exhausts your queue, your
Mhm.
queue workers, right?
Yeah.
So if I have a supervisor that has 3 workers and
Mhm.
I have 10 queues that it could be working on, it's not going
Right.
to do it. It doesn't work.
Mm.
It's what it actually does is it says, no, 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 spin up a new worker for each one of those queues. So now I actually have 10 workers and no overlap. Like they all sit there at 1 all the time. And I don't get any, like, it's on auto load balanced. And so it doesn't ever push any over to the other ones. It sucks. So then I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what the solution is to that. The solution, I suppose, is stop pushing to so many queues. But the thing is, I need to know information about like how many jobs there are in a specific queue.
Mhm.
I have to know that. And so they have to
Yeah.
be split up by queue. But it's just weird. And so I don't
I
know the
see.
solution to this problem.
Yeah. More
So
processes, I guess.
I
I
guess. I
guess
mean, it's like,
if yeah, I mean, if you know, right, that one supervisor can have 3 workers, but if 3 workers are working 5 queues, then, jobs being pushed to 2 of those, if you've got Q1 has got 100 jobs on it, Q2's got 100 jobs, Q3's got 100 jobs, and you push, like, 20 jobs onto Q4, like, it's not gonna jump between those queues.
it
That's
doesn't.
where you're
Yeah.
getting at, right? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. And
So you
also, I
basically
will
have to
say,
have 1 worker per queue for that to
yeah,
work.
yeah.
Mhm.
And if you don't, it'll automatically create and provision them. So even if my supervisor 3 says max process is 3, but I'm watching 5 queues, it will create 5 workers for that supervisor. And
Mhm.
it'll assign 1 to each of them, because the minimum number of workers that you can have is 1 for that supervisor. So all of the queues being monitored will have 1. Now here's the sucky part. Typically, like the way I want it to work, as I want to say, I have, let's use your example. I have 3 workers. I have 5 queues that it's watching. So supervisor 1 has 3 workers. There's 5 different queues that could be pushed into this, you know, that this supervisor is watching.
Mhm.
I would expect that if Q1 has 10 jobs and the rest of them have 0 jobs, I would expect that supervisor to put all 3 workers on that queue. All 3 workers go spin up and hit those 10 jobs until they're done. That's how I want it to work. But it does not. Instead, what it does is it says, nope, Q1 has 1 worker, Q2 has 1 worker, Q3 has 1 worker, Q4 has 1 worker, Q5 has 1 worker. Q1 gets 10 jobs, it only has 1 worker. Screw you, I don't care that the rest of them are empty. No workers,
Yeah.
no more workers. So, yeah, I don't know the solution. I don't know if the solution is just a bunch more workers, but I don't want to have a worker sitting on an empty queue all day long. I don't want to provision. So it's like what I want to do is I want to say min number of workers is 0. Allow me to do 0 workers sometimes,
Yeah.
but it doesn't let you do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Mhm.
You used to be able to
I
do
mean,
that, but you can't anymore.
yeah. I mean, I suppose having them sitting there doing nothing is not the end of the world, really, end of the
I
day. I know
guess
they're
it's just
consuming resources and whatever, but yeah.
exactly.
Mm,
So
very interesting.
that's what it is. So if any of you folks out there, okay, so 2 things, homework. What games should I play? And secondly, how do I solve the Horizon thing? If any of
Yeah.
you folks out there know, I'd love to hear about it. Until then, this was episode 173 of the Laravel News, not Laravel News, the North Meets South Web podcast. You can find show notes for the episode at northmeetsouth.audio/173. If you liked this show, rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be incredible. Hit us up on Blue Sky or on X at Michael Dorinda, at Jacob Bennett, or at North South Audio. All right, folks. That's it. That's all we got. Until next time, have a wonderful evening. Peace.